There's something deeply unsettling about watching a species do the impossible. As a military analyst for the Galactic Federation's Special Operations Division, I've spent my career studying combat tactics across 847 known sentient species. But humans? They're different, and not in the way you'd expect. Let me be clear, this isn't another one of those humans or space orcs reports. Trust me, I filed enough of those. No, this is something far more terrifying. This is about the day I watched human special forces turn everything we knew about environmental limitations into a joke. It started on Planet Infernus. Now, for those of you not familiar with our classification system, Infernus is what we call a Class X death world. Surface temperatures averaging 70 G, atmospheric pressure 3.2 times galactic standard, and constant sandstorms that can strip the paint off a military-grade transport in under 4 minutes. We use it as a training ground for our most advanced environmental survival systems. Or at least, we did, sir. We're picking up movement in Sector 7. Lieutenant Krav's voice crackled through my comm unit. I still remember how his secondary breathing bladders were pulsing rapidly, a sure sign of stress in my species. Impossible, I replied, adjusting my environmental suit's cooling system for the 5th time that hour. Nothing survives in Sector 7. The acid content in the sand there would dissolve. Sir. Visual confirmation incoming. The holoscreen flickered to life, and I felt my primary heart stop. My secondary heart wasn't far behind. There, walking through a sandstorm that would have killed most species in seconds, were figures. Bipedal. Moving with purpose. No environmental suits visible. What in the 7 moons of cracks, I muttered, zooming in. Are those humans? They were. 6 of them. Walking jogging through conditions that would have killed our most elite troops in minutes. Their only protection appeared to be some form of light armor, and were those just fabric covers over their faces? Sir, Lieutenant Krav's voice was shaking now. According to thermal scans, their body temperature is stable. I remember laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you make when your entire understanding of reality starts to crack. Get me everything we have on human thermal regulation. Now. The next few hours were a blur of data streams and increasingly impossible readings. The humans weren't just surviving, they were operating, setting up equipment, running drills, in conditions that our scientists had deemed universally lethal. I watched as they established what appeared to be a forward operating base. Their leader, who we later identified as Captain Marcus Inferno Rodriguez, was actually complaining about the cold. The cold. In 70 G sheet. Status update on Squad Echo 7. His voice came through our intercepted communications, clear as crystal despite the howling sandstorm. Day 3 of heat acclimatization training proceeding as planned. Minor equipment degradation due to sand, but nothing we haven't handled before. Requesting permission to extend training period by 48 hours to really get the new guys used to it. I remember staring at my environmental suit's temperature gauge, watching as it struggled to keep me alive, even inside our reinforced observation post, and thinking heat acclimatization training. Training. That's when Lieutenant Krav made it worse, sir. According to their communications, this is their moderate difficulty training program. I needed a drink. Several drinks. Unfortunately, the liquid refreshment dispenser had melted 2 hours ago. The next day, we watched as they ran combat drills. Not survival drills, actual, full-speed combat maneuvers, in conditions that were literally melting our surveillance equipment. One of them, a woman they called Sergeant Sarah Sunburn. Chen was teaching the others how to optimize their movement in the deep sand. Keep your weight distributed, she barked, her voice carrying through the storm like it was just another day at the beach. This isn't that different from desert training back home, just a bit warmer. A bit warmer. A bit warmer. I've seen Craxian war beasts die in these conditions. I've watched Volturian battle tanks sink into the acid sand. But these humans, they were treating it like a mild inconvenience. It gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. On day 5, their communications equipment started having issues with the heat. Not major issues, just some signal degradation. Know what they did? They sent out their tech specialist, Private James Sparks O'Connor, to fix it. Without an environmental suit. He was out there for 2 hours, making repairs and improvements, occasionally cursing about the annoying sand getting into the circuitry. The annoying sand. The same sand that had dissolved 3 of our monitoring drones. By the end of the week, I had to completely revise our threat assessment protocols. How do you classify a species that treats lethal conditions as a training ground? What threat level do you assign to soldiers who can operate efficiently in environments that kill your observation equipment? But the real kicker, the absolute peak of this madness. When they finally packed up to leave, I intercepted their final mission report. It read basic environmental training completed successfully. Conditions suitable for rookie squad orientation. Recommend including this in standard training rotation for all new Special Forces teams. Standard training rotation. They wanted to make this standard. I'm filing this report with the highest possible priority status. Not because these humans are immediate threats, they seem surprisingly peaceful when they're not casually defying the laws of nature. No, this needs to be prioritized because we need to completely rethink how we assess military capabilities. The Galactic Federation has always relied on environmental barriers as strategic advantages. Toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, lethal pressure zones, these were our guarantees. Our insurance policies against invasion or infiltration. The humans just turned those insurance policies into training grounds. End of Part 1, Section 1. Personal Log Continuation Captain Rex Vorax, Galactic, date 47,392.7. The aftermath of our Infernus observation has led to some interesting developments in our strategic planning department. And by interesting, I mean several of our top military strategists are requesting early retirement. Can't say I blame them. How do you plan defenses against a species that treats death worlds as graduation exercises? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about what happened when we tried to understand how they were doing this. We dispatched our best xenobiologists to analyze the data. Dr. Vex Prime, our leading expert in comparative physiology, spent 3 days reviewing the footage before suffering what we call a cognitive rejection event. In layman's terms, she started laughing uncontrollably and had to be sedated. Before the sedation took effect, she managed to explain a few things that made this even more disturbing. They're not using any advanced technology, she kept saying, waving her tentacles in what our medical staff described as concerning patterns. It's all just biology and minimal protective gear. Their bodies are just doing this. Turns out humans have this thing called sweating. Most species would consider having your body deliberately leak fluid to be a critical design flaw. Humans, they turned it into a survival mechanism. They're basically walking cooling systems. But it gets better. Remember Captain Rodriguez, the one who was complaining about the cold and 70 heat? We did some background checking. Turns out he's from a place on Earth called Phoenix, Arizona. When we converted the average temperatures there to our standard measurements, several of our computers filed error reports, assuming their calculations must be wrong. They weren't wrong. Humans not only survive in these conditions, they build cities in them. They raise families there. They go outside for what they call fun. Fun. In temperatures that can cook most species alive. End of Part 1, Section 2. Personal Log Final Entry Captain Rex Vorax, Galactic, date 47,392.8. The final straw came 3 days after the human special forces departed. We sent in our own elite environmental troops, the best of the best, equipped with our most advanced survival gear to study the area where the humans had been training. We lost contact with the first team in under an hour. The second team, dispatched with even more protective equipment, lasted 2 hours before their environmental systems failed. The third team made it back. Mostly because their commander had the good sense to turn around when they found the remains of our monitoring equipment had been reduced to puddles of refined metals. The same equipment that the humans had been casually setting up and taking down like they were arranging furniture. Here's the part that keeps me awake at night. This was just one environment. Just heat and acidic sand. We've since received reports of human special forces training in Arctic conditions, underwater bases, and even low-oxygen high-altitude zones. They call it cross-environment conditioning. I call it a fundamental violation of what we thought were universal constants. My final recommendation to the Galactic Federation Military Command is simple: reclassify humans immediately. Not as a threat, they've shown no aggressive intentions toward us. but as something possibly more concerning, a species that doesn't just survive in death worlds. They use them as qualification courses. End log. End of Part 1, final section. Postscript note: since filing this report, I've received word that the humans have requested permission to establish a permanent training facility on Infernus. They called it a nice starter location for their interplanetary special forces program. I've decided to take an early retirement. I hear the ice plains of Glacius Prime are lovely this time of year. Though, given what I've learned about humans, I should probably check if they're already there, using the 150 deg C temperatures for what they'd call light cardio. Remember when I said I was retiring to the ice plains of Glacius Prime? That was a mistake. A colossal, freezing cold mistake. Guess who I found there? That's right. The humans. Again. I thought I'd seen everything on Infernus. I was wrong. So very, very wrong. Thermal readings confirm ambient temperature of 150 deg C. The automated weather system chirped cheerfully through my triple-layered environmental suit speakers. I'd come to hate that cheerful chirp. Mainly because the humans outside my observation post weren't wearing anything close to my level of protection, and they were camping. Not surviving, not enduring. Camping. They'd set up what they called a winter wonderland base camp. The sign they'd put up, yes, they made a sign even had little decorative icicles drawn on it. Base camp is established. Commander Sarah Ice Queen Winters reported through their comms, requesting permission to begin advanced cold weather training exercises. I'd been tracking Commander Winters since she'd arrived. Her personnel file, what little we could access, listed her as a cold weather operations specialist. When asked about her qualifications during the initial briefing, she'd simply said she was from Minnesota, which after some research I discovered was a place on Earth where humans voluntarily live in sub-zero temperatures for significant portions of their year. They call it winter, I call it insanity. Hey Ice Queen, one of her subordinates called out Lieutenant Jack Frost Thompson, according to our records. Want to do some ice fishing before the real training starts. Ice fishing. They were going to cut holes in the 150 deg C ice and try to catch local wildlife. For fun. Before their actual training began, I needed a drink. Unfortunately, all my liquid refreshments had frozen solid. Again. End of Part 2, Section 1. Personal log continuation galactic date 47,398.3. The situation has evolved. That's the diplomatic way of putting it. The more accurate description would be everything we thought we knew about cold weather operations has been thrown into a glacier and shattered into tiny, frozen pieces. It started when their basic training exercises began. I watched through our most advanced thermal imaging systems as Commander Winters led her team through what she called a light morning jog 5 kilometers, through a Category 7 blizzard, in temperatures that freeze atmospheric gases. Keep up the pace, she shouted over the howling wind. This is perfect conditions for resistance training. Perfect conditions. I had to replay that 3 times to make sure my translator wasn't malfunctioning. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. One of their equipment pods had malfunctioned during landing, scattering their heavy winter gear across the glacier field. Know what Commander Winters said? We'll get by with the light stuff. Maybe it'll actually make this challenging. The light stuff, as she called it, wouldn't have met our minimum safety requirements for a temperate climate, let alone the coldest recorded temperatures in the known galaxy. Sir, my new assistant, Junior Analyst Zeal, whispered through chattering mandibles. Are they actually enjoying this? I watched as 2 of the human operators started having what they called a snowball fight during their patrol rotation. They were laughing, in conditions that had caused 3 of our environmental suits to crack just from the cold. Zeal, I replied, I stopped trying to understand human recreational activities after I saw them surfing on lava flows on Infernus. That's not a joke. That actually happened. I have the footage, though most believe it's doctored. End of Part 2, Section 2. Personal log continuation galactic date 47,398.4. Today we witnessed what the humans call a practical field exercise. I'm still not sure if what I saw was a military operation or an elaborate practical joke on the entire concept of physical limitations. Commander Winters had split her team into two groups for what she called Capture the Flag. The objective seemed simple. Each team had to capture the other's flag while defending their own. Standard military training exercise, right? Wrong. They decided to do this during a methane storm. A methane storm, in 150 deg C temperatures, while ice fishing, simultaneously. Area denial is more fun when you can't see 3 feet in front of you, Lieutenant Thompson shouted gleefully as he set up what they called a slip and slide zone, deliberately making an ice patch even more slippery. I watched in horror as they turned one of the most lethal environments in known space into what appeared to be a combination of combat training and winter sports resort. That's when things got interesting. And by interesting, I mean completely terrifying. A glacious prime ice worm, a predator that even our most heavily armed research teams avoid, surfaced near their training ground. These creatures are apex predators that can sense heat signatures through solid ice. They're basically living tanks with teeth, evolved to hunt in the most extreme cold imaginable. Know what the humans did? Commander Winters looked at it for about 3 seconds before saying, "New training objective, people. Let's show this overgrown ice snake some Earth hospitality." But what followed was, I don't even have words in any known language to properly describe it. They turned their capture the flag game into some sort of improvised rodeo. Lieutenant Thompson actually tried to ride the ice worm while Commander Winters set up what she called a slip and slide escape route. They weren't running from the predator. They were playing with it. Playing with an ice worm. Commander Winters reported later, sounding disappointingly calm, "Be advised that local fauna may provide additional training opportunities, requesting permission to include ice worm evasion techniques in standard course curriculum. I need a new career. Maybe something nice and safe, like antimatter containment testing." End of Part 2, Section 3. Personal log, final entry, Galactic date 47,398.5. The breaking point, the moment when I finally understood that we weren't just dealing with environmental adaptation, but something far more fundamental, came during what the humans called their graduation exercise. They decided to build an igloo. Simple enough, right? Wrong again. They built it at the bottom of a cryogenic geyser field. For fun. Because regular igloos would be too easy, according to Commander Winters. Perfect spot for the sauna, she declared, surveying an area that our sensors couldn't even analyze because the temperatures broke their capability scales. Yes, you read that correctly. They built a sauna in the coldest place in known space because they wanted to warm up after swimming. They went swimming in liquid nitrogen pools. Water's Great Sergeant Maria Penguin Ramirez called out while doing what she called a polar bear plunge. I've since submitted my resignation from my civilian observer position. I'm thinking of taking up residence on a nice, boring space station. Maybe one with good thermal regulation and no chance of humans deciding to use it for light parkour practice in variable gravity. Though knowing them, they're probably already there, using the station's external hull for what they'd call space skateboarding or something equally impossible. Final observation: we need to stop thinking of humans as adapting to extreme environments. The truth is far more terrifying. They don't adapt to environments, they adapt environments to themselves. Through sheer force of will and what they call creative problem solving. They pulled me out of retirement. Again. Nobody understands them like you do, they said. You've witnessed their capabilities firsthand, they said. What they meant was nobody else is crazy enough to keep watching these humans break the laws of physics. But this time it's different. This is Chaos Prime. For those unfamiliar with Chaos Prime, lucky you. Imagine taking everything lethal in the galaxy and putting it in a blender, then make it worse. The planet doesn't just have extreme conditions, it has all the extreme conditions. Simultaneously, in randomly shifting patterns, acid rain that falls upward, gravity that changes direction every 17 minutes, electrical storms that can fry a quantum computer, temperature zones ranging from plasma hot to absolute zero, sometimes within meters of each other. We use it as a navigational hazard warning. The humans? They just requested permission to use it for their advanced qualification course. I watched the first human drop ship descend through the chaos storms. It was piloted by Major Jack Storm Reynolds, a man whose personnel file reads like a horror story for physics professors. Weather's looking sporty today, he announced cheerfully as his ship dodged a bolt of lightning that could have powered a small city. Perfect conditions for the finals. Perfect conditions. I've come to hate those words. End of Part 3, Section 1. Personal log, continuation, galactic date 47405.2. Remember Commander Winters from Glacius Prime and Captain Rodriguez from Infernus? They're here too, because apparently this is some sort of reunion training exercise. Thought we'd bring the whole gang together, Major Reynolds explained during their briefing. Make it a proper challenge for once. A proper challenge. On Chaos Prime, where reality itself seems to have given up. Their mission plan made me question my sanity. Again. First phase, Major Reynolds outlined, will establish base camps in each extreme zone. Ice Queen's team takes the cryo valleys, Inferno squad gets the plasma fields, and my group will handle the variable gravity zones. What about the acid rain sectors, someone asked. Oh, those overlap, everything makes it more interesting. Interesting. They found ways to make Chaos Prime more interesting. I watched as they split up, each team heading to their designated fun zones as they called them. That's when I noticed something disturbing. They were carrying surfboards. Sir, my new assistant, the fourth one this month, asked, why would they need surfboards in a gravity storm? I just laughed. I couldn't help it. I'd seen this before. Those aren't for water, I explained. Those are for surfing the gravity waves. End of Part 3, Section 2. Personal log, continuation, galactic date 47405.3. Day 3 of the ultimate training exercise, as they're calling it. I've had to replace my observation equipment 6 times. The humans haven't replaced anything. They're just adapting. Heads up, Lieutenant Lunaspark Phoenix called out as she surfed past my observation post on a gravity wave. Big one coming through. She wasn't wrong. A gravitational anomaly strong enough to bend light was rolling through the valley. Our sensors screamed warnings. Emergency protocols activated. Know what the humans did? They organized a competition to see who could ride the wave the longest. 10 points for style, Commander Winters shouted as Captain Rodriguez executed what he called a zero-G kickflip through a field of upward falling acid rain. I've seen them use plasma vents as hot tubs. Watch them play catch with ball lightning. Turn gravity inversions into what they call extreme parkour opportunities. But today they outdid themselves. Major Reynolds decided that normal base jumping, already an insane human concept, wasn't exciting enough. So they started doing it between gravity zones. They'd jump from one gravity field to another, calculating their trajectories through zones where physics itself couldn't make up its mind about which way was down. They called it multidimensional extreme sports. I call it proof that humans don't just ignore physics, they taunt it. End of Part 3, Section 3. Personal log, final entry, galactic date 47405.4. It happened today. The event that made even Chaos Prime seem tame. A Class 10 chaos storm, a convergence of every lethal phenomenon this nightmare of a planet could produce. Temperature differentials that could crack planets. Gravity waves that could bend space-time. Electrical discharges that could power civilizations. We instantly issued an evacuation order. The humans responded with something that will haunt me forever. They organized a festival. Perfect conditions, they all shouted in unison, as if they'd been waiting for this. I watched, helpless, as they deployed what they called their party equipment. They set up gravity surfing ramps in the anomaly fields. Installed lightning collection arrays to power what they called their totally epic light show. Used the temperature differentials to create what they called the ultimate spa experience. Major Reynolds was grilling something called hot dogs in a plasma vent while Commander Winters had set up an ice luge through a cryo tunnel. Captain Rodriguez was teaching rookies how to acid rain dance. That's when I finally understood. We'd been looking at this all wrong. These weren't just training exercises. This wasn't just about military capability or survival skills. This was humanity's way of saying we don't just survive here. We turn your nightmare into our playground. End of Part 3, Section 4. Final report to Galactic Federation High Command Special Advisory Committee, galactic date 47405.5. Recommendation: immediate reclassification of all human special forces capabilities and revision of all known environmental hazard classifications. Justification: they aren't adapting to these environments. They're making these environments adapt to them. Through sheer force of will, creative problem solving, and what they call good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Additional note: they've submitted plans for what they call an extreme environment adventure resort chain. Yes, they want to turn death worlds into vacation spots. I'm not retiring this time. There's no point. They'll probably turn whatever peaceful place I choose into an extreme sports opportunity. Final personal log entry: if you need me, I'll be in their new training facility. Might as well learn how to surf gravity waves. After all, if you can't beat them. Though I draw the line at acid rain dancing. A reptiloid has to maintain some dignity.